It is 7:30 p.m. Central European Time on May 17th, 2025, deep within the Kremlin in Moscow. Vladimir Putin sits in his office, a room adorned with dark wood paneling and portraits of his Soviet predecessors. A cup of black tea, infused with a hint of lemon per his preferred recipe, rests on a silver coaster to his right. Outside, Moscow's streets softly glow under the last rays of spring sunset, but Putin's mind is focused on a far-off place, Burkina Faso. This small West African nation, led by the charismatic and youthful Captain Ibrahim Traoré, has become a key piece in Putin's geopolitical ambitions. Putin had met Traoré just a week earlier in Moscow, and the encounter left a lasting impression. The 37-year-old Burkinabe leader stood out with his energy and sharp rhetoric. During a press conference beneath the golden chandeliers of the St. George Hall, Traoré had passionately denounced Western interference, blaming France and the United States for the terrorist unrest destabilizing his country. "We will no longer be pawns of a former colonial power," he declared, his piercing gaze fixed on the cameras. Turning to Putin, he had called for a partnership based on equality. "Give us the means to defend ourselves, not to enslave us further." Those words echoed in Putin's mind, seeing in Traoré a reflection of his own struggle against Western hegemony. Tonight, Putin was contemplating an even bolder move, traveling to Ouagadougou to meet Traoré on his own turf. This visit would be a powerful symbol, a tangible demonstration of Russia's commitment to African nations rejecting the established world order. However, the risks were clear. Burkina Faso was mired in a severe security crisis, with jihadist groups operating in the north and persistent rumors of internal plots against Traoré. Putin knew his security advisors would oppose the idea, but he was determined. For him, the strategic benefits outweighed the dangers. A strengthened alliance with Burkina Faso could pave the way for greater Russian influence across the Sahel region, a territory rich in resources and strategically vital. Putin pressed a discreet button on his desk, and almost immediately, the heavy door opened to admit Sergei Lavrov, his foreign minister. Lavrov, a man whose features bore the marks of decades in diplomacy, carried a thick dossier under his arm and a serious expression on his face. "Sergei," Putin began in a firm but calm voice, "I want to go to Ouagadougou. We need to solidify our relationship with Traoré and Burkina Faso. This trip must show the world that Russia is a reliable partner for African nations breaking free from Western influence." Lavrov set his dossier on the table and adjusted his glasses. "Mr. President, this is a bold decision," he replied cautiously. "The situation in Burkina Faso is unstable. Terrorist attacks are frequent, and there are internal political tensions. We'll need to coordinate closely with their security forces and deploy exceptional measures for your protection." Putin gave a cold smile. "I trust you to handle it. I want a full delegation, military advisors to discuss defense, energy experts to propose infrastructure projects, and cultural representatives for a symbolic exchange. This won't just be a political visit. It will be a declaration of friendship." The plan took shape quickly. Putin wanted this visit to be a landmark event, a break from the traditional relationships between major powers and African nations. He envisioned a series of public activities, a solemn welcome ceremony at Ouagadougou International Airport, a military parade through the capital streets, and a concert featuring Russian orchestras alongside traditional Burkinabe artists, such as the griots of the Sahel. To personalize the gesture, he commissioned a Moscow artisan to create a unique gift for Traoré, a handcrafted chess set, with pieces carved from ebony and mahogany, depicting Russian and Burkinabe soldiers united against a faceless enemy represented by black pawns. This gift, subtle yet laden with meaning, would reflect Putin's vision of an alliance rooted in a shared struggle. The following days were a whirlwind of activity at the Kremlin. Lavrov assembled a team of diplomats and strategists to coordinate the details. Security was the top priority. A squadron of Sukhoi Su 35 fighters was put on alert to escort the presidential plane and patrol Burkinabe airspace throughout the visit, a measure already proven effective during Traoré's recent trip to Moscow. Agents from the FSB, Russia's Federal Security Service, were dispatched ahead to Ouagadougou to collaborate with Burkinabe forces and inspect key locations: the airport, the presidential palace, and the planned routes for Putin's movements. The delegation's composition was carefully curated. Alongside military advisors who would bring proposals for anti-aircraft defense systems and surveillance drones, energy experts were included to discuss rural electrification projects, a priority for Burkina Faso, where millions still lived without electricity. Russian agronomists were also added, with the idea of sharing techniques to improve crop resilience amid drought and conflict. Finally, a small group of artists, musicians from the St. Petersburg Symphony Orchestra and folk dancers, was incorporated to participate in the cultural exchange, a gesture Putin hoped would be broadcast by international media. Meanwhile, Putin immersed himself in meticulous personal preparation. Each evening, he spent hours poring over detailed reports on Burkina Faso, its colonial history under France, its mineral resources like gold and manganese, and Traoré's current challenges with terrorism and poverty. He studied Traoré's journey, a former officer who seized power in a 2022 coup at the age of 34, galvanizing Burkina Faso's youth with promises of sovereignty and social justice. Putin wanted to understand the man behind the leader, not just to negotiate more effectively, but to forge a human connection that would strengthen their alliance. He even jotted down a few phrases in Russian and French, Traoré's language, to break the ice during their meeting. In Ouagadougou, news of Putin's potential visit reached Ibrahim Traoré during a strategic meeting with his military commanders. The afternoon was sweltering, the tropical heat saturating the air in the secure room at the presidential palace. Ceiling fans spun lazily, unable to dispel the heavy atmosphere. Traoré, dressed in a khaki uniform adorned with his captain's insignia, listened intently to a report on a recent offensive against jihadist groups in the Sahel region. Progress was slow, and exhaustion was etched on his men's faces. Suddenly, the door burst open, and his foreign minister, a slender man with gold-rimmed glasses, rushed in, clutching a satellite phone. "Mr. President," he announced with a hint of excitement, "we've just received a message from Moscow. President Putin is considering coming to Ouagadougou for an official visit in the coming days." A heavy silence fell over the room. Traoré, usually stoic, allowed a discreet smile to cross his lips. "Putin here," he murmured, almost as if testing the idea aloud. The prospect of hosting the Russian president on his own soil was both a historic opportunity and an immense responsibility. Traoré understood what this meant for his country and for himself. Since taking power in September 2022, he had sought to reorient Burkina Faso's foreign policy, breaking away from France, its former colonizer, and distancing himself from the United States to turn toward partners like Russia and China. His anti-imperialist rhetoric, broadcast through fiery speeches and televised interviews, had captivated Burkina Faso's youth, weary of the West's unfulfilled promises. But this popularity had also earned him enemies. Military factions opposed to his regime, foreign powers seeking to maintain their influence, and terrorists exploiting the chaos. Putin's visit would bolster his domestic legitimacy and send a clear message to his adversaries. Burkina Faso had found a powerful new ally. Yet Traoré remained wary. He had grown up in a country where major powers often exploited local resources at the expense of the population. He knew that Russia, despite its rhetoric of equality, had its own interests: access to Burkina Faso's manganese, a strategic foothold in the Sahel, and a base to counter French influence in the region. "Prepare everything necessary," he ordered his team, his voice firm but thoughtful. "I want this visit to be a success, but we must be clear about our priorities. Russia can help us with weapons and infrastructure, but we will not become their puppet." His advisors sprang into action. Burkinabe army units were deployed to secure the capital, with roadblocks and heightened patrols around the airport and palace. An organizing committee was formed to plan the official events: a welcome ceremony with military honors, a joint address to the public, and a gala dinner featuring local dishes like with peanut sauce alongside Russian specialties like borscht. Traoré, meanwhile, pondered the demands he would present to Putin. He wanted anti-aircraft defense systems to protect cities from enemy drones, surveillance drones to track terrorists in rural areas, and financial support to develop a local mining industry, ensuring the profits stayed in Burkina Faso. In Moscow, preparations were nearing completion. The presidential plane, a modified Fictional 96 equipped with advanced defense systems and a luxurious interior, was ready for the long flight to West Africa. Putin spent the eve of departure in quiet retreat, reviewing his arrival speech with his writers. He wanted a simple but impactful message. We are here to build a partnership of equals based on mutual respect and sovereignty. He rehearsed the phrase in French, imagining Traoré's reaction and that of the Burkinabe crowds. On the morning of departure, under Moscow's typically gray sky, Putin boarded the plane, accompanied by his delegation. Military advisors carried briefcases filled with strategic plans, energy experts discussed hypothetical pipelines, and artists adjusted their instruments in the back of the aircraft. As the Ilyushin took off, Putin gazed out the window, his mind wandering. This trip was not just about politics or military strategy. It was an opportunity to redefine Russia's role in Africa, to present itself as a different kind of partner from the former colonial powers, an ally that respected the aspirations of the nations it supported. In Ouagadougou, Traoré spent a restless night. He paced his office, a map of the Sahel spread out before him, marked with red dots indicating conflict zones. He knew this visit would draw the world's attention, including that of his enemies. Rumors were already circulating about suspicious movements within the opposition, and he feared an assassination attempt during Putin's stay. Yet he was resolute. For him, this visit was more than a diplomatic meeting. It was a chance to consolidate his power, advance Burkina Faso's interests, and prove that his country could stand up to major powers. As Putin's plane soared over the Sahara, the two leaders shared a common thought. This visit would mark a turning point. Whether it led to a lasting alliance or merely a fleeting episode in the complex game of international relations, it promised to shift the balance of power in the Sahel and write a new chapter in the history of their nations. On May 17, 2025, at 7:30 p.m. Central European Time, Vladimir Putin, in his Kremlin office, contemplates a trip to Ouagadougou to meet Ibrahim Traoré. Their recent Moscow meeting revealed a shared ideology, with Traoré denouncing Western imperialism and seeking an equal partnership. Putin sees this visit as a chance to expand Russian influence in the Sahel, despite the risks of instability in Burkina Faso. Putin tasks Sergei Lavrov with organizing the trip, insisting on a diverse delegation, military advisors, energy experts, and artists for cultural exchange. He envisions public events like a parade and a concert, plus a symbolic gift, a handcrafted chess set depicting Russian and Burkinabe soldiers. Security, with Su-35 fighters and FSB agents, is a priority amid terrorist and political threats. Preparations mobilize entire teams. Su-35 fighters and FSB agents are deployed to secure the visit. The delegation includes energy experts for rural electrification and agronomists for food security, plus Russian artists. Putin studies Burkina Faso in detail, aiming to understand Traoré and his challenges to build a genuine connection. In Ouagadougou, Traoré learns of the visit during a military meeting. He sees it as a chance to boost his legitimacy and negotiate support like drones or anti-aircraft systems, but remains cautious of Russia's motives. He orders strict security measures and prepares official events, while prioritizing Burkina Faso's sovereignty. In Moscow, the presidential plane is ready, and Putin rehearses a speech on equal partnership. In Ouagadougou, Traoré anticipates risks of attacks and bolsters defenses. As Putin's plane flies over the Sahara, both leaders know this visit could redefine Russo-Burkinabe relations and impact the Sahel, marking a historic turning point.